It's about the I got to say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
Gets the ball, gets back, pulls up for the win. Got it! Detroit basketball. Holloman looks the clock, half court for the win. Oh! The Lions go for it. The Vikings bring it here. The pass is a touchdown to give. Javi Baez, homered earlier. First one, in the air, deep left field, again! Yes, Tigers win! Javi is unstoppable!
This is BS Sports.
And away we go. So, excuse me. In case you can tell, excuse me, wow. In case you can tell, I look a little sweaty right now, and you might even hear a little bit of noise coming out from this outside area. My AC is broken. So shout out to my apartment complex for not fixing it, despite completing out the work request that I sent into them. So, we're going to be a little hot today, and not in a good way. To quote the great Al Michaels, let me find the drop. Where is it? Let me see if I can find it. No, not that one. Hold, please. Here we go.
Going to be a wet and likely wild night.
Thank you, Al. That is where we're at. So it's hot. But speaking of hot, the Detroit Red Wings. And I don't mean that the team is hot. I mean that the general manager should not only be on the hot seat, he should be on the sun. He should be on the hottest seat of all, because Steve Yzerman needs to be fired. And I've been saying this at this point for a couple of years, but now there's just no getting around it. There's no world to me where you are not just a sycophantic fanboy if you don't think this bum, this complete hack, shouldn't be fired. Now, I am going to give everybody a history lesson, and then I'm going to present some information to you that is going to be very, and I mean very, enlightening into just how bad it has been. So, February 29th, 2024, just a couple of years ago, Red Wings held the first wildcard spot with 72 points. They were 4 points behind Toronto for third in the division, 2 points ahead of Tampa Bay in the second wildcard spot, and 8 points ahead of New Jersey and the New York Islanders, who were both out of the playoffs. By the end of the season, they had 91 points and missed the playoffs due to a tiebreaker with Washington. Fool me once. February 28th, 2025. The Red Wings had 66 points and the number one wild card spot due to a tiebreaker with Columbus. They were 6 points out of third behind Tampa Bay and 4 points ahead of Ottawa, the Rangers, and Boston. By the end of the season, they had 86 points, missing the playoffs by 5 points, and Ottawa had stolen their spot as the number one wild card team. And now, of course, we get to the current year, February 28, 2026. The Red Wings had 74 points, the most points at the end of the month of February than they had ever had in those last 3 years. 74 points, and we're in the first wildcard spot. They were 3 points ahead of a second wildcard Boston. They were 1 point behind three-seeded Montreal. They had a 5-point lead over Washington, who was out of the playoffs. They are now, of course, eliminated from playoff contention, and I'm not sure if Washington is still in contention. Let me double-check that, because at the time that I wrote that, Washington still was. Let me take a look here, and no, they are not. But regardless, Washington is still ahead of you with 93 points. So, and also, by the way, Ottawa has also made the playoffs. Philadelphia has made the playoffs. Montreal is still in the 3 seed. So they stayed exactly where they were. Montreal did not move. They stayed exactly where they were in the standings. Boston jumped you. They took your one-seeded wild card spot. Ottawa jumped into the playoffs despite being out of it at that time. So let's see. Ottawa gets better in March. Boston gets better in March. Montreal keeps it up in March. And even Washington, who missed the playoffs, got better in March. You know what I notice? The only team in the Eastern Conference that seems to always universally, without fail, get worse is the Detroit Red Wings. And that is the construction of Steve Yzerman. He has built a team that is soft, that is weak, that is incapable of playing well down the stretch. Even last night in a game that didn't matter, they were up, they were feeling good, they want to end the season on a high note, and they blow that game and lose it in overtime. Just like that. Just like that. Like, sometimes it's not just a talent issue. Sometimes it's that guys are, this is going to sound mean, guys are just losers. And I've tried to be nice to Dylan Larkin. I've tried, but maybe he's just not a winning player. Maybe he's a bus rider and not a bus driver, to paraphrase Charles Barkley. So, now here's the other thing. Well, hold on. Before I get that, let me ask anybody who might still be a Steve Yzerman truther, any conspiracy theorists that are still in some false consciousness that believe that Steve Yzerman is the guy who's going to get us back to the Stanley Cup glory, which is what we're doing this for, by the way. We're not doing this just to make the playoffs. Okay, we're not doing this just to be the 3 seed or the 1 or 2 seed in the wild card. We're doing this to win a Stanley Cup. We're 7 years in. We haven't made the playoffs. Let me ask you something, if you are still in that camp. If you hire a carpenter to build you a house, and every year in the winter, that house deteriorates and falls apart, would you keep hiring that same carpenter, or would you say, you know what, it's just not working? Pretty simple to me. I wouldn't hire that carpenter. So, in the same way, if Steve Yzerman continues to build teams year in and year out with different personnel, in some cases with different coaching, and every year they do the same exact thing, then maybe the guy making the team has to go. Now, here's the other thing. Here's the other lie that I need to dispel. And that's what it is. It is just a dishonest lie. Well, his pro moves haven't been so good, but his drafting, that's what's going to help us. And that really is where he's building for the future. Never mind the fact that we're 7 years in. Never mind the fact that, you know, if the future is 3 years from now, we're talking the Ken Holland 10-year rebuild. And never mind the fact that we're already 10 years with missing the playoffs. So even if you want to say he inherited a bad situation, he certainly had a lot of, you know, losing seasons to you know, jump out of it. So people will say his drafting is what's building him. Okay, let me name you all of the players that are currently or have at some point played on the team in any significant count. There's some guys that might have made one game, and I didn't count them. Okay, you ready? Here we go. And this is in 7 years of drafting. Okay? Mo Seider, Albert Johansson, Lucas Raymond, Simon Edvinsson, Carter Mazer, who, by the way, played 6 games this year, Marco Kasper, Nate Danielson, who was demoted this year, Axel Sandin Pellikka, I can't think of his first name, Finney, Emmett Finney, and Michael Brantzig-Nygaard, who also was demoted in the middle of the year. Now, that's 10 players. 10 players over 7 years. If you got 1 pick or 2 picks per draft, like if it was like the NBA, basically, where you had 2 rounds of drafts, you might be able to say, okay, 10 players in 7 years, that's actually pretty good. But you have far more than just that. You have dozens and dozens of players that you have picked over 7 years, and 10 of them are on the team. Now, here's the other thing. If you do not include first-round picks, that number goes from 10 to 3. That means that 70% of the players that are currently or have at some point made the team are first-round picks. And of those 7 players, do you want to know how many of them have had a season of at least 50 points? 2. 2 players out of the dozens of draft picks, 2 players have had a season of at least 50 points. Now, before you hockey geniuses come at me and say, well, just because you don't get a lot of points doesn't mean you're not a contributor. Let me tell you something. 50 points is not some Wayne Gretzky, some Sidney Crosby, some insurmountable, insane stat. 50 points this year, at least as of yesterday, put you in the top 129 of NHL players. Not even outside of, you're beyond the top 100 players. You're telling me that after 7 years of drafting so many players, and a lot of times drafting very high. Nate Danielson was drafted very high. Marco Kasper, very high. Brant Signigaard, very high. You're telling me that only 2 have gotten into the top 129 of players? That is not the sign of a good drafter. That is the sign of a terrible drafter. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And these same people will get all, excited about Carter Bear. You want to know something about Carter Bear? He might be a good player. I don't know. But you know what I have a good chance of guessing? He probably won't get a 50-point season. Why? Because only 2 guys that he's taken in 7 years have done that. So, Steve Yzerman, one final thing.
It's time to go!
It's time to go. There's nothing here. The Yzer plan was, in fact, a complete farce. And Steve Yzerman was carried by a Tampa Bay Lightning team that I don't know how much influence he really had or if maybe his time was just up, that he had a short stint of success in Tampa Bay. Whatever it is, that guy is gone. And I know for a fact that if we fire him, if he's drafted, if he's hired by another team, it will not be a team worth respecting. It will be some bum team that never wins, that never does anything right. But because we are obsessed with the fact that he played for us, like at this point, it's going to be closer to 30 years ago than it is to being 20, if it isn't already. We decided to keep him on the payroll. And of course, we all know, this has been said ad nauseum. If his name was Steve Buscemi, if his name was Steve Botswana, he would have been fired. Not this year. He would have not been fired last year. He would have been fired the year before. He would have been fired well before the Steve Yzerman fanboys are now all suddenly realizing, hey, wait a minute. We haven't made the playoffs in 10 years, and 7 of those have been under Steve Yzerman. That's weird. How's that happening? So, yeah. There's nothing for me to say. If you want to get all, bricked up over Max Plant or over Carter Bear or Brant Signigaard or whoever, Sebastian Coe, do whatever you want. Because I'm just not going to do it. There's just nothing about this team has shown any ability to actually get better, to make any actual tangible progress. Steve Yzerman needs to be fired. And if you can't see that, I can't help you. I can't. then watch your team miss the playoffs again next year.
It's time to go!
It's time to go. All right, let me see. We got a lot to go through here. Obviously, Detroit fan, you're out here bombing the chat. We love it. Tigers, Dylan Dingler just hit a ground ball. That's going to be an out. That moved the runner over to third at least. That's Matt Vierling. How did Matt Vierling get a double? How did that happen? Or whatever happened. The one sunny day and many days of rain, it's very hot. Yeah, I mean, it's going to rain. I feel it. I feel the humidity. Like, it's definitely going to rain. So, anyway. Buffalo and Ottawa both started their rebuilds around the same time, 2019. Now both teams have jumped the Red Wings and made the playoffs with guys they developed. Forget Buffalo, man. Montreal started later. Montreal was in the Stanley Cup in 2025, and they made the playoffs last year. They were in the Stanley Cup and then bottomed out in 2021. And then 4 years later, flash forward, they're back in the playoffs. And now they're a legitimate Stanley Cup contending team out of the East. Ottawa's consistently been making the playoffs last couple of years. Philadelphia is now in the playoffs. Heck, Pittsburgh is still a playoff contender. Buffalo is the number one team in the Eastern Conference right now, or they're number two, behind Carolina, number one in the division at least. They have one of the better records in the league. I mean, what are they? They're fourth, something like. Hold on, Avalanche is one. They might have more points. I don't know how many more games some of these teams have to play a couple more games. So we'll forget about that. Ignore me. Anyway. People love telling me Steve had nothing when he arrived here, especially when I bring up Steve's timeline with Tampa by year 7. Oh, stop. Buffalo just made it starting with nothing 7 years ago. Exactly. Like, you can't say he had not. Like, first of all, if he had nothing and he can't, like, you have to bottom out, and you're telling me that there's nothing of value? Like, that, your job is to find the value in the seeming nothing. Okay, it was his job to develop I don't know, who's some of the Michael Rasmussens of the world or the Joe Velenos of the world. But his team didn't do it. And you can say, well, those guys sucked anyway. They were never going to be good. Okay, but you know what I don't? You know what I see and say, I don't know. Like, I look at the Tigers, okay? Casey Mize, at the time that Scott Harris took over, I think a lot of fans were pretty much done with Casey Mize. They didn't want him. And he's just one example. You could pull other examples. But now Casey Mize has a role on the team. Okay, to a lot of Red Wings fans, they probably be like, oh, well, Casey Mize is just a bust. So there's nothing you can do with it. But of course you could do something with it. If you're competent, if you're smart, if you hire the right guys, you can squeeze the value out of your players. This is the difference between the good GMs and the bad GMs. The bad GMs see a bad player and they get nothing out of it. The good GMs can see a bad player and get something. And I'm not saying, Hart Trophy. I'm not saying, the whatever. I'm not saying, first team, whatever the equivalent to the first team All-Pro. I'm not saying that. But again, you find these kind of scrappy players, you see what they're good at, and you just squeeze the talent juice out of them. So, anyway. Another thing people are telling me as an excuse is everyone else got better. Well, if everyone else got better, what does that say about you? This is like, if everyone else got better and you didn't, you're not everyone, well, that tells me that you didn't get better. That didn't tell me anything. Anyway. Albert Johansson is technically a drafted guy also. I think I mentioned Albert Johansson. Did I not? Maybe I didn't. I don't know. If I missed, whatever. 11 guys. Does it really matter? He's not good. Albert Johansson's not very good. So, Yeah, the first 4 Steve drafts, only 2 guys have made the team outside of the first round, Albert Johansson and Elmer Soderblom. And Elmer Soderblom got traded at the deadline. Elmer Soderblom's not on the team anymore. And what do you know? Pittsburgh manages to find some value out of him. Isn't that so strange? Isn't that so weird? How is it that an organization that has consistently made the playoffs, that has won the Stanley Cup in the last decade, isn't it so weird that they're able to find value out of a player like Elmer Soderblom and Steve Yzerman, and the Red Wings couldn't find any value? Boy, it's almost like they run their organization better than you. Weird. Let's see. Emmett Finney in 23 was the one to break that trend. At this point, the idea of Trey Augustine, Eddie Jenberg, or Amadeus Lombardi can be the other. These people don't exist until they're on the team, as far as I'm concerned. And like their ideas, they're not people. That's how it is. Philadelphia rebounded with a Michigan State guy, Porter Martone. It's interesting. Big Gorilla, you say you hope they don't fire Steve Yzerman? I don't know, man. Like, what reason do you have for hope? I think I've laid out my case pretty well. Appreciate you for leaving the comment, but I can't say I'm with you, buddy. Not really a Casey Mize fan club. I'm only for keeping him until Jackson Jobe or Troy Melton get back, or a Verlander washed insurance policy. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess this is my point either way. Is like it's not about Casey Mize being this Cy Young winning player. He's obviously not. But he has a role, right? He plays to, we get something out of him. He's a depth guy. He's a guy who's a fit starter who you can get a good night out of. And we've gotten some good outings out of him, for sure. Anyway. Tigers threaten but don't score. Where have I heard that before? Anyway.
It's time to go!
I love that drop so much. Why is Matt Vierling on a Car Shield commercial? Can somebody please explain that to me? How has this guy managed to get on the Car Shield commercial? He was barely on the team last year. How is he on the commercial? You know, I liked Matt Vierling. I think the first or second year he was here, he's really fallen off a cliff in terms of his production. He's not good. Not that he was ever really that great, but he had at least like a decent stretch in 24 where he just kind of kept, he stayed on the team, and he went on a bit of a hot streak, I think, near the end, but yeah, not good. No, Vierling definitely not recovering from that injury. Anyway. So didn't really have that much lined up for the show, which makes sense given the focus primarily is Steve Yzerman. So, look, so the other thing I wanted to talk about is the NBA playoffs. They're finally back. They come back every year. April, here we are, April in the D. And Detroit got to the 60-win mark. This is the first time the Detroit Pistons have won 60 games in 20 years. 20 years. And before, the naysayers might say, well, Cade Cunningham really did a number for them. Yeah, well, they got to 60 wins when Cade Cunningham went down. I mean, obviously, they got that 60th win on the last game of the year. Cade Cunningham was playing. A chunk of those games, there was no Cade Cunningham. I don't know how it's not unanimous that JB Bickerstaff is the coach of the year, because as much as Joe Mazzulla out in Boston, as well as he has done, JB Bickerstaff took a team that last year was they were the 6th seed I think they were the 6th seed or the 5th seed. And that team didn't have any, I would say, mega splash moves. They didn't do what the Rockets did, right? And go out and get Kevin Durant. You know, they didn't have a Luka Doncic fall into their lap like the Lakers. No, they made some ancillary or seemingly ancillary moves. They bring in Duncan Robinson. Obviously, Karis LeVert has not worked out entirely well, but Duncan Robinson brought in, a Dennis Jenkins on a G League contract that turned out to be immense value to the team. And now the team is the number one team in the Eastern Conference. And lest we think that, the Pistons are just a bunch of tryhards. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, let's say they are just a bunch of tryhards. Who cares? Like, who the hell cares? They're winning. If they're trying hard and that's what's beating these other teams in the Eastern Conference, fine. Then we'll just beat them. we'll just walk into the Eastern Conference Finals or walk into the NBA Finals, and maybe we're just crazy enough to win it all. The other thing to contend with is Cade Cunningham, despite having a collapsed lung, and that's what took him out, he hadn't missed a step. There's no change in his play. He came back. It was as if he didn't miss any time. So I feel incredibly high on the Pistons coming out of the East. I really do. I mean, when I look at the rest of the, okay, right now the play-in games are going on. I don't really know what's going on with those in particular, but you got Charlotte and Miami, and you got Philadelphia and Orlando. One of those 4 teams is going to play the Pistons in the first round. Let me ask you something. 7 games set. Do you believe any of those teams is going to get 4 wins before Detroit does? No. No. The Pistons have beaten those teams. They've rocked those teams. There's no world where those teams are going to come into Detroit because it's home court advantage and be able to steal a game or 2. It's just not happening. Meanwhile, the other teams out of the East, I mean, I give respect to Boston. I think Boston is probably the team that, if any team is going to beat Detroit out of the East, in my mind, it has to be Boston. I mean, the Knicks, no. Okay, the Knicks, every time they play Detroit, they look like complete shells of themselves, and I think they're a soft team. And soft teams don't go very far in the playoffs, believe me. The Hawks, they're kind of a fun story, but I don't think they have the depth or the talent. Cavs, they have the James Harden effect in the playoffs, which means they're definitely not going to win. Toronto is an interesting team, but again, I don't think they have the depth or the talent compared to Detroit. Of the other 4 teams outside of Boston, maybe Toronto is an interesting pick. But yeah, out of the Eastern Conference, I just don't see any other team really being that major of a threat, again, other than Boston. And I think Detroit can punch back with Boston in a significant way. And you have to imagine, again, if Detroit does have to play Boston, which is not a guarantee, they're going to have to come in here. They're going to have to come to Detroit. It's going to be home court advantage Detroit. And the Pistons have beaten Boston before. They've beaten Boston on the road. They've beaten Boston at home. So I really don't see. In my mind, I think the Pistons are the floor this offseason. The floor this postseason has to be Eastern Conference Finals. If you lose out of the first round, that's just unacceptable. But if you can get yourself in to the Eastern Conference Finals, everything beyond that is just icing on the cake. And I know, what some people will say is, well, shouldn't you want more? Of course I want more, but I'm realistic. Okay? I mean, again, this is a Pistons team that, they're still very young. Okay? This is only their second year with this group, with this core of guys going to the playoffs. But, there's a part of me that thinks, okay, Jalen Duren, an extra year of playoff experience. Cade Cunningham going into the playoffs with another year of experience and an MVP caliber season. Dennis Jenkins emerging as a legitimate backup guard and a shooting threat. You didn't have a Duncan Robinson last year. I mean, you had Beasley, but He wasn't paying his rent, and that might have affected his play. Let's just be honest with ourselves. So, yeah, I'm really high on the Pistons out of the Eastern Conference, and I think all Pistons fans should be. And I think I am as hyped up for these playoffs as I have ever been for the NBA playoffs in, well, like a very long time. Okay. Last year was fun, but now I'm like antsy. I'm like, here we go. We can do this. We can win the NBA championship. We really can. I think it's possible. So let's just go out there and shock the world. Let's see. Pistons will pick 21 I'm assuming you mean regardless how they finish in the playoffs thanks to that Kevin Huerter trade. Again, what a spectacular move. And, I don't mean to pat myself on the back and tell you I told you so, but I totally told all of you so. All right? Everybody was like, oh my gosh, Kevin Huerter sucks. Why we trade Jaden Ivey? We have a better first-round pick next year now, and Kevin Huerter has been quite good. He has really, took him a little bit to get used to the system, took him a little bit to get kind of his sea legs here, but he's been quite good. He's been able to get some nice shots. He's a pretty decent rebounder. He has, he's been solid. I don't think there's anybody complaining about that trade anymore. I mean, look, forget about what Jaden Ivey did to get cut. I'm not commenting on that particular. Jaden Ivey doesn't have a job, and Kevin Huerter is on a playoff team. And you got an extra pick, or not an extra pick. You got a better first-round pick. Again, another Trajan Langdon masterclass. I remember last year when the Pistons got, what was his name? Dennis Schroeder. He didn't even have to pay anything. He just manipulated he just got a bunch of picks, a bunch of ancillary picks, and then used the picks that he traded for to go get a player that helped them in the playoffs. Obviously, the marker of a general manager's ultimate success is in the championships that he wins with the teams that he's built. But I have been just astonished by the savvy moves of Trajan Langdon. It's the quiet moves. And again, those are the moves that really do make a difference. I know that people love the big moves. They love the big splash. They love the big free agent signing. They love all that. And that stuff is great. But the little moves, the little quiet moves that you don't even really notice or that you take for granted, those are the moves that are ultimately going to change. Anybody can sign a big name free agent. Any team can, give out a 10-year contract to some bum who doesn't deserve it. But it's those little moves. It's the Kevin Huerter trade. It's the Dennis Schroeder trade. It's the Duncan Robinson move. Those are the moves that in the quiet of the night that nobody really talks about. Nobody in the big shows talked about how great of a move Duncan Robinson to Detroit was. But I tell you, and we'll see by the end of the postseason, I tell you, the Duncan Robinson move was better for Detroit than the Kevin Durant move was for the Rockets. They went down. They were the number 2 seed last year. They're now the number 5 seed. Just saying. I'm expecting Charlotte is who the Pistons will face, mainly because of all the recent beef, the two teams. Hold on, I'm watching this. Oh, under the basket catch. Oh, man, that's a great play by Bobby Witt Jr. Anyway, I'm expecting Charlotte is who the Pistons will face, mainly because of all the recent beef between the two teams developing, and the NBA will be fools not to know that will be a draw. I mean, yeah, but the NBA can't control. I mean, to some extent, they'll be able to control it, obviously, with the referees. But, okay, so Charlotte would need to win against Miami, and then they need to beat either Orlando or Philadelphia for that to happen. So it's possible, and I think it would be awesome because I would just love to knock the doors off those Hornets. They really do get on your nerves. The LaMelos of the world. LaMelo Ball, just every time I look at his face, I don't like his face. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean to the poor guy, but I don't like his face. So I want to beat him. It'd be fun. Anyway. Let's see. Round 2, I can see Cleveland being a scary one, not in the sense of a long series, more that it could be short, but a close one. Yeah, I mean, like, James Harden obviously has playoff experience, but I think that kind of goes against him in a way. Like, his playoff experience is in sucking, like, in playing really badly in the playoffs. And it is, it's going to sound mean, but I don't really care. It's Cleveland. They never win in the playoffs without LeBron. Like, the only time they've ever had any playoff success was when they had LeBron. And they're also, I think their defense is hurt because of that James Harden trade. I'm just, I don't know. Cleveland doesn't really, frankly, I could see them losing that series to Toronto. I really could. Because it would be a perfect note in the James Harden story for him to lose in the playoffs again. And maybe that's just because maybe I'm just rooting for that. Maybe I just want it to happen. So that's why I'm saying that I think it will. Whatever. What difference does it make exactly whether that's the case? So it's kind of mad about her the first few games, thinking that the swap was the only saving grace. Now we got the best of both worlds, a reliable veteran, and probably the best case for the swap. Yeah. I mean, like I was underwhelmed as well by his play. I thought maybe he was going to have a bigger role, but it takes time. I mean, I think a lot of times guys want the Rasheed Wallace treatment where the guy is ready to go that game and he's immediately a gamer. Sometimes, again, it takes a little bit of time for these guys. And yeah, he's really started to fit in. And he's a bigger presence too. So that's why his rebounding is also quite good. I think Charlotte needs to beat Miami than lose. No, they wouldn't need to lose. They would need to win. So basically the way this works is the 9-10 seed, the winner goes on to play the loser of the 7-8 seed. The winner of the 7-8 seed goes on to play Boston, and they become the 7 seed. This is all nonsense. The play-in is such a ridiculous thing. It really is just totally ridiculous. But anyway, this is what it is. So if Philadelphia loses, they would play either Miami or Charlotte. If Charlotte loses to Miami, they're out. So the winner, Charlotte and Miami, that's, sudden death, basically. That's, March Madness. As close as we can get it. April Madness. April Angst. There you go. April Anger. April in the D. All right. So I honestly didn't really have anything else written down for today's show. The Tigers had a good weekend. Unfortunately, they're not starting off this week that great. They're down 1-0 to the Royals, top of the 6th. So they're certainly in this game. Framber Valdez pitching really well, but the offense is not there. In my mind, come on, it's hot out. The ball should be flying in 70-degree weather. The ball does not fly in 30-40 degrees. I don't know if anybody even knows what I'm referring to. Some people might know. I'm not really following the transfer portal, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't really feel confident commenting on that. I have seen that Michigan has, I think they brought in a couple, or at least one transfer. I haven't heard anything of them from MSU at all. So not thrilled about that, but I told you, I said this has to be a wake up call, but at the same time, MSU or Tom Izzo, he's not going to wake up, and it is what it is. We're just going to run it with Tom. And I think you need to be able to embrace it. And we'll see. It's still relatively early, and I don't know, I guess, and I don't know what to make of it. Basically, MSU is whiffing on transfer centers. Well, That doesn't sound good. I don't really know, like, who is... Let's see. Losing out to Indiana and South Carolina. I mean... Okay. I mean, here's the other thing, too, is, you know, here it's sort of a... You know, Indiana is not very good, so... and South Carolina is also not that very good. Like, these other schools might be more willing to spend money because they're trying to make some money out of this, but they're not going to be good, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, what's his name? Trey Holloman. Remember Trey Holloman? He left. Where did he end up going? Did he end up going to South Carolina, actually? I think he did. I don't know. He ended up going somewhere, and it's like, okay, well, that didn't work. It's like AJ Hoggard. Remember AJ Hoggard? He went to Vanderbilt, I think. It's like, AJ Hoggard? NC State. Yeah, exactly. He went to some nothing school that paid him some more money than we were probably willing to pay him. And obviously he didn't have any success. So I think a part of that might just be, look, some of these players, maybe they just want the money. They don't care about team success. And in that case, you probably don't want that player anyway, even though obviously that might benefit you. But this is all to say, Tom Izzo, it's his job to make the team better. And if he's not doing that, if he's not finding the way to make that team better, you can't force anybody to come to you. I mean, unless you just give them an inordinate amount of money that is absurd. And I mean, look, there's the salary cap. At the same time, I'm thinking, well, why don't you do that? Like, he just must not really want to play for you, which is its own problem. But yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's college sport off season is just, I don't know. Like, oh, excuse me. Oh, great. Hold on. Hopefully my hiccups go away here. I think they weren't permanent hiccups. Oh, okay. All right. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, the Tigers, hopefully they can get out of this with a win. You're down 1-0. You got a runner in scoring position right now, Framber Valdez. He's pitched well, but it's like whenever he pitches, the offense doesn't seem to want to show up. I mean, granted, he had that terrible game in Minnesota. That was just awful. But certainly seems like that's not... Well, I'll hold my breath here. Let's see how the rest of this goes. Oh, and another thing I wanted to note here as we're kind of wrapping up here. So the Pistons play this Sunday at 6:30. I am planning on doing a live reaction to that. I have not, I don't think, ever done a Pistons live reaction show. I don't think I've ever done that. I'm gonna do it. I've done live basketball because I did it with Michigan State last year, and that was a whole lot of fun with the Big Ten championship and the Elite Eight game. Obviously, the result of that game was not great, but yeah, this would be a lot of fun. I can't guarantee I'll be able to do every single game. This is the problem with these playoffs that are series, is that, you know, one game you have on a Sunday, the other game you have on a, you know, Thursday, and it's like I can't guarantee that I'll be available. Some of those games I will, some of those games I won't. But Vinny Pasquantino struck out there, so nice pitch in there by Framber. Will Wade was the head coach of LSU when we played them in the Sweet 16 back in 2019. That's the Aaron Henry breakout game after Izzo yelled at him against Bradley in round 1. Oh, man. That's funny. I think you've only done Lions for the Detroit teams. I've seen you call MSU football and basketball, but not the Pistons. I have done the Tigers. I did the Tigers in their first year making the playoffs. I did one of the Astros games, and I did one of the Cleveland games. The Astros game, I got the win. The Cleveland game was it was game 5. I did that one, and that was sad. That was a sad game. But I didn't do any last year. It just didn't work. Like, the time didn't work. It was like I was working in the wild card. It was like in the middle of the workday, so I couldn't do it. And then There was like the Cleveland games. It wasn't, or rather the Seattle games. They were late at night, so I didn't really want to do them either. So yeah, I've done. I was gonna say Red Wings. No, I haven't. Nor do I really want to be honest with you. Though, if I ever do live reaction to those will be there will be no commentary because I'm not gonna be able to follow. We're just gonna be chatting and hanging out. Anyway, but I've done Tigers. I've obviously done Lions. Lions is what I've done the most. I've done MSU football. I've done MSU hoops. Haven't done Pistons. That would be the only team that's left. I mean, outside of the Red Wings. So yeah, I've done them all, man. I've done it all. The only thing I haven't done is a championship. That's the only. Yeah, closest I got was that NFC Championship game, man. It's closest I've gotten. And yeah. Hate the fact we played Seattle, not because of the 15-inning night, but because we were on West Coast, aka Pacific. Yeah, it was terrible. It was like games starting at like 9 o'clock. And that 15-inning nightmare, that was truly a nightmare. I stayed up and watched every single inning of that. And you know what made it worse? I was on a I was on a vacation with some of my friends. All right. I wanted to be able to enjoy it. I thought, okay, we'll watch a baseball game. You know, it'll end at a certain point, then we can kind of hang out for the rest of the night, one way or the other. I was up until 1 a.m. The next day, I had the worst headache I've ever had in my entire life. It was awful. It was awful. So bad. I would not recommend. One of the worst sports experiences of my life. Probably number 2, though, to the Washington game. The Washington game against Detroit in the divisional round in 24, well, in 25. That was the worst. I've never felt so angry, so displeased, so just every negative emotion. I was so mad. Okay, this is confession time because we're just hanging out at this point. The show's basically over. That game, so that was on a Saturday. It was Saturday night. I'm Catholic. I'm going to Mass the next day. I couldn't even go to my regular Mass time. I had to go to another parish that I knew nobody that I knew was going to be there because I didn't want to see people. I wanted to die. This is so bad. It was
just pain. It was pain everywhere.
It was just pain everywhere. I was Jameis Winston, and it was yeah. Wouldn't recommend. Anyway. All right. Well, I have severely ended my yapping. I've severely ended my yapping. That sentence doesn't make any sense. I've done all the yapping I can do. So that's what we're gonna wrap it up. So once again, wait, hold on before we go. I understand what my uncle meant he hated the Red Wings Ducks round 2 series in '97. Detroit sweeps Anaheim. However, 3 of the 4 games ended in overtime. Yeah, right. Yeah, that is one of the benefits of the Red Wings. Well, not that we would know because we're not in the playoffs anymore, but one of the benefits of not being in the Western Conference anymore is that now our games, if and when we do make the playoffs again at some point, they're not going to be at 10 o'clock at night playing Anaheim or San Jose. They're going to be at reasonable times. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't do this again. Like, hold on. Now that you got me on this topic, hold on. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if some movement in the standings occurs again. So just looking at the Western Conference, like a team like Chicago, what is Chicago doing in the same conference as Vancouver, as Seattle, as Calgary? Like, these are significant time differences. Or Utah. Like, what really should be the case is if they expand again, which they might. I mean, they probably will. Is they can expand and move. What am I trying to say? They can move Chicago over to the East. Like, what they could do, and what they could do is, let's say they have an expansion team in Houston. That's a big name that's a big city that's been brought up as a potential suitor here. Obviously, they already have Vegas, so that kind of goes out of the picture. But if they bring in a Houston team, right, Chicago is going to the Eastern Conference. I'm convinced. And you know what else? It would satisfy all original 6 teams being in the Eastern Conference. Because Chicago, let me just double check my math here. Yeah, Chicago is the only original 6 team that's in the Western Conference. And I know that would be very sad to a lot of purists because you would love to see another original 6 Stanley Cup. But right now you're basically playing with one team out of the West. They're gonna like if Chicago doesn't make the playoffs or Chicago doesn't go far in the playoffs, you're not gonna get the original 6 Stanley Cup anyway. So you might as well just put them all in the Western or Eastern Conference where it makes sense. Anyway, you had me on that roll. I had to finish. So anyway, that is where we're going to wrap it up, though. I do appreciate anyone for stopping by and listening in. I hope that by next week, Steve Yzerman's fired. I doubt it will be the case, but hey, stranger things have happened. So with that being said, have a great rest of your night. Hopefully the Tigers can mount the comeback here. They're down 1-0 at the end of 6 innings. It's brutal. So have a good rest of your night, everybody, and see you all probably, hopefully, Sunday evening. Take care. See ya. Goodbye. See you later. Goodbye.